Welcome back to the Free Code Camp podcast. I'm Quincy Larson, teacher and founder of freeCodeCamp.org. Today, we're talking with a software engineer who got his first developer job at age 43 after 2 decades as a manufacturing worker just trying to provide for his kids. Before we talk to him, let me give you some quick community updates. Free Code Camp just published a free 6-hour course that will teach you how to use Python to train your own large language model. If you're interested in AI and machine learning, this is a great place to start. You want to have some basic programming skills, but then you're going to dive into key concepts like reward modeling, supervised fine-tuning, mixture of experts layers, RMS, norm, rope, KV caching, and more. This is a 6-hour course. I've linked it in the video description. Check it out after you finish listening to this podcast. We also published a Python course that will help you build production-ready AI systems. This is enterprise-grade stuff here. No-nonsense course that will take you step-by-step through building sophisticated data pipelines that scrape training data, clean it up, and ensure its integrity before feeding it into your model. And I love the teacher's relentless teaching style. Be sure to check out this free 2-hour course. Free Code Camp also published a quicker, around 1-hour course on building your own advanced AI agents. So this is an advanced course. Again, you're going to use Python. You're going to implement interactive voice agents and intelligent research assistants. And this course will even expose you to multi-agent workflows. You'll use sample code bases that we provide, and you'll be able to use popular libraries like LangChain and LiveKit to code it long at home and build your own systems. We also published a comprehensive tutorial that will walk you through the most common performance issues people have with their front-end React apps. This JavaScript tutorial will teach you how to identify memory leaks and how to fix them. It's going to equip you with the tools you need to do so through a variety of different means, such as event listeners, timers, subscriptions, and async operations. It's approximately 15-minute read. Check it out on the Free Code Camp publication. Again, link in the description. And this is just a fun link that I want to share with you. Did you know that it's possible to play the classic like Nokia game of Snake? If you ever had one of those brick phones, Snake, that was what us kids played on our phone when we were stuck in line at the DMV, right? Well, you can do that in an address bar. If you're watching the video edition, that is literally the app. It's basically, it shows like a browser tab and the address bar where you would normally have like what URL you're visiting, and you can play the game of Snake there. So awesome. This is done through ASCII characters and some clever JavaScripting. Shout out to Argentinian developer Damian Ferreiro for building this. If you are enjoying this, if you just like to procrastinate and you're looking for something to spend 2 or 3 minutes on today, check this out. I've added a link in the description, which will take you to Damian's GitHub repo, which will take you to the actual playable game. And the song of the week, going all the way back to 1994, Return of the Space Cowboy by Jamiroquai. I love this song. I've been listening to it, of course, since 1994, but I just listened to it this morning and I was like, man, I need to tell other people about this song. If you haven't heard this song, go check it out. If you've heard it before, go check it out. It's a great fusion of jazz fusion and funk and pop all rolled into this one. It is such a jam. And there's this lightning fast bass solo in the middle of the song. The bass is incredible. Stuart Zender is just like one of the all-time great kind of jazz fusion bass players. And this song is just super laid back. The video is just JK dancing around, doing lots of cool tricks and stuff like that. Watch it after you finish this podcast. Link in the description. Now we are ready to jump to the interview. Thomas Gooch is a self-taught software engineer. He got his first developer job at age 43. He spent decades working in manufacturing while he was raising his kids before using Free Code Camp to learn to program. That's right, he's an alum. And he was able to translate his JavaScript skills into working on enterprise Java apps. And now he works at a semiconductor company. We are going to talk about what working 12-hour manufacturing shifts is really like. It's not glamorous. He's going to tell you all about it. Why he preferred FreeCodeCamp's free curriculum over the paid resources that he tried. When and how to use AI code generation. He is very balanced in his take on this. He does think it is very useful, but at the same time, there's a time and a place, right? And then the last thing that he talks about, which is just so inspiring to me, is just having faith in your ability to ultimately get out there and get a developer job. There's so much doom and gloom, people like just struggling to get jobs. And I think they're going to struggle in any field, but right now is a particularly rough time in software engineering if you want to go out and get developer jobs. But he's just very confident, and he, has lots of actionable advice to help you do the same. So have faith in your ability and enjoy this interview with Thomas Gooch. Thomas Gooch, welcome to the Free Code Camp podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, I'm so stoked to talk with you. And I want to start with manufacturing. So you have worked in manufacturing, actually like etching chips and doing things like that at like a chip foundry. And you're in a unique position to be able to talk about like manufacturing jobs versus software engineering jobs. Can you talk a little bit about your journey into manufacturing?
Yeah, so I've got about 12 years of experience in semiconductor doing various things at various levels. And the manufacturing that you see in semiconductor is different than what you would see like at a steel mill or, a lumber mill, right? Or even like a food processing plant. You wear these whole get-ups, they call them bunny suits, where like only your eyes are visible, and that's to keep contamination from getting to the chips. And you mostly take around these boxes full of wafers and load them into a tool and scan a barcode, and that's about it. They've abstracted all of the recipes and the steps away from that. All you have to do is scan in the barcode, and it does what it needs to do in the machine. And so your day is walking around on a whole cold steel floor. So you have to have good shoes. I learned that lesson the very hard way. And you're on them for about 12 hours at a time because they do 12-hour rotation shifts, typically in manufacturing. And so, your day is kind of quiet. You can talk to your coworkers, but they're also doing their own thing. So there's not a lot of talking. And you're just kind of walking around putting boxes in different places.
Yeah. So it's not too different from like, I used to stock shelves working at grocery stores overnight. And I would just basically cut open a box, like gradually break down a pallet and put it on the shelves.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. And there's some of that too, where you have to move. The task is to move a box from one staging location to another staging location so that it's ready for the next step, right? And so there's definitely aspects of that there too. And so there's not a lot of manual labor involved. It's just walking around with a box, putting it in different places.
Yeah. And you do that for 12 hours. What's the rationale behind 12-hour shifts? That seems grueling.
I think it's easier to staff on 4 different 12-hour shifts. And so the way it typically works, or has worked where I've been, is it's 3.5 days. And so on Wednesdays, you'd have a half day. And then on the other days, you'd have 12-hour shifts, or it would alternate. There was one place that did alternate. So one Wednesday you would work, and one Wednesday you'd have off. And so that would leave you like having 36 hours on one check and 48 on the next, which was a little weird, but it's, you got used to it. But they were generous with the breaks. Like you'd have 2 1-hour breaks. So you'd have a meal break and then just another rest break to chill. And so you're really only working 10 of those 12 hours. And you got paid for like 11 and a half of them. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you did this for a long time. What other aspects of the semiconductor? I think I said in the intro that you are a developer working at a semiconductor company, Tokyo Electron. But what other areas have you been in? You said you've been working all kind of throughout the semiconductor industry.
Yeah, so I've worked inside the fab handling the wafers and chips. I've worked qualling the tools is the term, and it's just running recipe tests to make sure everything is within set boundaries. I've worked as an engineering tech where we ran experiments manually on wafers. I've worked in lithography, which is like laser etching each individual chip. With the laser is huge; it's like the size of a semi truck.
Yeah.
but I've worked there. That was the most interesting job I had as the engineering tech. I loved that job. It was never the same thing twice. It was always very interesting science. It was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed it, and it was there that I decided that I was going to start going back into programming. I did some programming when I was in high school, like I made our middle school's first web page, and that's about it. My life took me in another direction.
Yeah.
And I decided to get back into it while working there because I had free time where I'd have to sit at the tool to make sure it was doing its job, but I had like an hour of nothing to do. So I'm like, well, why don't I learn programming while I'm sitting here? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of how it started. And after like 9 months of just doing that a little bit, I decided to just quit and do it, learn full time for a while. And so I did that for a little while, but eventually kind of got bored with just learning all the time. And so I went back to work for another chip manufacturer, building the tools that made the microchips now. And that was a different scenario where these machines are they're very large and there's a lot of things inside them. And installing the different parts is very difficult. You're on the ground in very uncomfortable positions. And doing that at my age in my 40s solidified my decision that I need to get out of physical labor and get into programming. But also, I was fortunate at that job to have the same kind of downtime where I could learn programming. And I actually rewrote their parts front end, their parts ordering front end while I was there.
Wow. So
As
you were able to kind of like take some of the on the job things you were interacting with and potentially improve them, just
Yeah,
applying your self taught developer skills. Now, I want to step back and just reflect. Okay, you're in your 40s. You've been doing
yeah,
physical labor for 20 years or so, and you are now teaching yourself programming. So self taught developer at 40. And how old were you when you got your first developer job?
44, 43.
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about your developer education journey. Of course, you don't have like a 4-year degree. Real quick, I do want to mention that you have been taking classes on and off for like 2 decades.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that kind of like higher adult education journey that you've been on?
Yeah, so like right out of high school, I was going towards like an associate degree in computer user support, and I was working at a as a contractor for Nike Golf at their distribution warehouse, and the software they had was terrible, and it honestly turned me off of getting into computer user support because I thought that computers relied on rules and logic and were predictable, but the software was anything but predictable. And it wasn't representative of everything that it was out there. I think it was just a local homebrewed software that they had that just didn't work very good. But it turned me off, and I stopped going to school for that and picked up a different job um, where I was like working in logistics, like behind the scenes, moving things around, that kind of thing. And went to work for this company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, and kind of became their remote inventory expert. Um, and then from there, I took a job in Texas, like 15 years ago, as a supervisor um, of customer service agents that were on site at customers' places.
Yeah.
So my life kind of went in a different direction. I was management for 8 years, and then I got burned out of that and decided I want to go back to being an individual contributor. And during this time, I also took classes. I started to get my BA in business. I was a manager. A business BA makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then my divorce happened, and it was very difficult. The strains of work and school, and so I stopped going to school for the business degree um, to focus on work, and never restarted it. And then years down the road, in my 40s, I decided I wanted to get my degree. After I landed a job without a degree, I decided I wanted one to make upward mobility more easy, to, if I ever got laid off, to be able to land a new job easier, and just to get the rest of the education that I might not have got myself. And so I went back to school for a BA in computer engineering,
Okay.
which I'm working on today.
And you're doing it through Western Governors University, recurring character on the FreeCodeCamp podcast. Bo Carnes has a degree from Western Governors University. He went there to get his second degree after, like, he studied education. Bo Carnes runs the FreeCodeCamp channel. For anybody who doesn't know that, I've had him on the show before, and he was able to complete the degree through Western Governors University for, I think he only spent like $10,000 or something. He didn't spend that much money doing it. So that is a kind of self-paced remote learning option. And it sounds like you're taking advantage of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I can spend 1 hour one day, 5 hours the next day, and it doesn't matter. You pay by the semester, and no matter how many classes you can complete just 4, or you can complete 10, and it's the same cost. So I find that with working and doing other things, I usually only get 4 to 6 done a semester. But I've got 2 more semesters and then I'm out.
Okay. And then you'll have your degree in computer engineering.
Yes.
Which is like a little bit more hardware specific than software engineering, but it has a lot of overlap. So there's like kind of like electrical engineering, and then there's software engineering on the other side. And then in the middle is kind of like computer engineering. Is kind of how I've heard it right.
I think I misspoke. It's software engineering.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Not computer.
Okay.
I think they call it computer engineering, but it's definitely software.
Okay. Well, the reason I say that is like they are distinct degrees, and I talk to people who, and some programs have a computer engineering, and that's kind of their software engineering. Some people just have computer science, but it is an engineering focused degree, so it's more practical than like more pure theoretical applied math, like a traditional computer science degree. Okay, cool. So you are going through that, and you are working as a developer, and I want to go through your journey with that time. You said you had like time when the giant, I've heard those photolithography machines described as like basically the most sophisticated machines on earth in terms of like the precision of the mirrors and lasers and all that stuff. I mean, like these things, and they cost like $100 million for like the top end ones that they use at like in the Taiwan fabs where they make the NVIDIA chips and stuff like that. But I'm not sure if these machines were these the same type of machines, or were they like, what type of chips were you all manufacturing?
So, different places, different things. When I worked for NXP, it was like automobile chips that were used in various automobile functions for the most part. Accelerometers, logic chips, stuff like that. When I worked as the engineering tech, it was all kinds of things. Anything that could be put on a wafer. One of them was like a blood tester. It was the largest one we made, and each chip was about 1 inch long, which is huge for a chip. But they would put blood in it, and it would go through and it would read the stuff and spit out results. It was really cool. There were other logic chips, memory chips. There was like a GPS chip that went to space. There was chips that were used in VR. There were all kinds of great things. It was fantastic, like looking at the different technology and how it worked.
Yeah, so a lot of like ASICs, I think is they're called, like chips that are like specially purposed and designed from the ground up for a specific task, as opposed to a more general, CPU chip that could be used in lots of different scenarios. Awesome. So let's talk about like you're using these machines, and you said you have like downtime, and you're using that learning programming. How did you learn programming?
Honestly, FreeCodeCamp was where I started, and I was looking for options. I knew there had to be enough options out there that I could teach myself. And I was cruising through YouTube and found a video that referenced FreeCodeCamp. And like at the time, manufacturing jobs don't pay near what developer jobs pay. I made just enough to cover my bills. I didn't have extra money for tuition. I didn't have extra money to pay premiums on other accounts. So FreeCodeCamp was fantastic in the fact that it was free, but I really found that it was nice and comprehensive too. And I'm not just saying that to butter you up. I enjoyed my time in FreeCodeCamp a lot. And it also wasn't blocked by our company's firewall, which is the number one important thing.
Yeah, we make a very important point to not do anything that would get us blocked by any company firewalls, which is why FreeCodeCamp doesn't have like a game section, for example. Even
Right.
though we've loved to like have FreeCodeCamp games, New York Times games. You know, that's like the New York Times is no longer a newspaper company; they're a games company. That's actually where most of their revenue comes from. Is
Oh,
people
wow.
going and signing up to play Wordle and stuff like that. I actually talked with somebody from the NY Times at Commit Your Code a few days ago, and they are in the games division.
Nice.
So, but we're not blocked. I'm happy to hear that. So you are sitting there learning kind of on the job during one of your breaks, or did you actually have time to? Could you listen to like podcasts or do anything like that while you're working, or does the work demand your full focus?
I couldn't listen to anything with headphones because you have to be able to hear the audible alarms, right? So they didn't let us have headphones, but we could use the internet, right? As long as we weren't doing anything bad with it. And so we had to be there at the computer, which was right next to it. And so I would be there on the computer on Free Code Camp going through the exercises while waiting for a lot to finish.
Wow. So the fact that FreeCodeCamp runs completely in a browser and you can just access it, you know, for us, it's always been an access thing. Like people use FreeCodeCamp within like public libraries. If they don't own a laptop, they'll use it. People in prisons use it running like on a local area network. There's an entire charity, Persevere, that goes out and gets labs set up for inmates so that they can learn skills so that when they get out, they'll be able to reintegrate easier.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that it runs in a browser and you can just pull it up on any machine with a browser was one of the ways that made FreeCodeCamp accessible to you while you were working.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So what other things did you try along the way? Because few people just show up at FreeCodeCamp and like, all right, I'm good. Like, I'm just going to follow this linear curriculum exactly. Like, if you're anything like me, you want to explore. You're like a velociraptor touching all the different corners of the electrified fence, trying to find like an easier way out.
Yeah, so I wanted to like maybe my thought was to have a second perspective on some of the things I was learning to help me get a more comprehensive understanding of what was going on. And so I found Code Academy and I did a lot of all their free stuff. And then I paid for like 4 months of their premium and went through one of their things. But ultimately, I didn't find that it was worth it, worth the expense. I wasn't getting a secondary perspective that was different enough to make a difference. Everything, it was just repeats of what I already learned on Free Code Camp.
Yeah. And what years were you using Code Academy and FreeCodeCamp during the like early period of your learning process?
19 and 20.
2019, 2020. So you were working with curricula that's like basically 5 or 6 years older than the coursework we've been actively working on. So if you have time, check out the new stuff because we're
I've seen
extremely
it. It
proud
looks
of
really
it.
awesome.
Yeah, we've been working so hard on that. So it's heartening to hear that even like with 6-year-old coursework and platform and stuff, that it was still better than like paid products that you were paying like $25 a month or something. Is that how much was? Some of them are like $50 a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're really proud of that. Okay. So I have to ask some questions about what your job search was like. So you're using Free Code Camp and you're learning these skills, but you do want to transition into actually working as a developer. Did you approach like freelancing first? How did you kind of establish yourself and establish your reputation as a dev?
Yeah, so I did do some freelancing. Like, I would post on Nextdoor. Does anyone need a website for their business or whatever, right? Got a couple jobs that way. I did freelance for a while. And then I did also work with 100 devs in their agency format to get extra jobs too. And then I applied for jobs, mostly the click apply, which we now know is not effective.
Yeah, Leon has talked extensively. Leon, who runs 100 Devs and Resilient Coders, don't be a clicker, he says.
Yeah.
Don't click apply. Always try to use like a network angle, essentially. And he's been on the podcast twice. And you can listen to my recent conversation if you're listening to this in the Free Code Camp app. Just open it up and you can find a conversation I had with both Leon Noel and Danny Thompson a few weeks ago. But so you learned, what are some other things you learned instead of like in addition to the don't click apply during that period?
Use your network, right? Structure your LinkedIn in a way that recruiters searching for things will find you. And so I followed Danny and Leon's advice. And I would get a couple times a week a recruiter asking me, mostly they would ask me about Java, not JavaScript. And that it was JavaScript is what I was learning. And recruiters don't seem to know the difference. And so it would be like, hey, thanks for reaching out, but Java, I don't know Java, I know JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
And so one day, I had the privilege of working for a company where I had free time to learn and stuff. And so I wasn't hard searching for a job, and I wasn't in need of a desperate job. So I wasn't doing a job search as a full-time activity. But a recruiter comes in my inbox and says, hey, I've got this job role. You look great for it. Let me know what you think. And I look at it, and it's JavaScript and React, and that's great. And then it's Java. And I'm like, hey, here's the deal. I don't really know Java. And she's like, well, they're willing to teach someone on the job if you know all the rest. All right, I'm game if you're game. And here we are today, 2.5 years later, I'm still there.
Awesome.
Learning Java again.
Java is an endeavor.
Yes. I bounced around a little. I started learning Java, then they put me on another project, and I stopped with the Java, and now I'm back on Java also again. But it's been a good ride. It's been fantastic. I was lucky, and the job came to me. Luck played a huge part in me landing the job. Of course, I did the work to put my profile the way it was, the resume the way it was. I interviewed and passed all that. Yes, but I still say luck played a large part in me getting the role.
Yeah, to quote James Bond, luck is half of everything. The other half, chance.
Right.
So just another pithy little thing that if people confuse Java and JavaScript, just tell them Java is to JavaScript what car is to carpet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's cool. Like, we love recruiters here. Some of them are less knowledgeable about the tools than others, but they are helping. They helped you get a job, right? What's not to love about that? And I always encourage people, like, don't bash recruiters. You're going to hear people talking smack about recruiters and stuff. These are helpful people who will help you get a job. And don't get it twisted. Like, help them, educate them, but do so politely. Yes. And it sounds like your foundational skills, you already knew, like, a high-level scripting language. You were already familiar with, like, a lot of aspects of front-end development. You probably knew a little bit about data structures and algorithms, having gone through the freeCodeCamp curriculum. And that is a very portable skill set to a new language. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about your journey into learning Java and how much your prior knowledge of programming in other languages was helpful for that.
I think I pick things up a lot faster as a second language than I did on my first language. And even though JavaScript is a loosely typed language and Java is a strict typed language, there's a lot of parallels. And sometimes, I forget which operator to use, if it's equals equals or if it's dot equals. But learning another language definitely is easier now that I have one language under my belt. Picking up the different syntax is a lot easier than picking it up from scratch.
Yeah. The other thing that I'm very excited to talk with you about, and we can definitely talk about, like, what that experience was like. I mean, you've been there 2.5 years, but I want to talk about other aspects of your process toward getting to that job first. And one of the things that I understand you've been pretty involved in is, like, physical face-to-face meetup type events where you hang out with other devs and you learn from them. And I understand you also ran a meetup. Can you talk about the role that like in-person events and social groups of developers and people, developers in training, that those played in your journey?
Yeah, I think going alone is a very hard road in software development, in learning software development. I did much better once I found a community, and being able to meet with other devs, being able to be exposed to other aspects of development that you haven't seen yet has been fantastic. And I live in Austin, Texas, and we've got a pretty good meetup scene. The only thing that I noticed about it is a lot of the meetups were for a lot of higher level topics. Half the time I would go, and a lot of it would go right over my head. I still took notes because someday it'll click, but a lot of it went over my head. And so I took over a meetup for a while, Code Co-op Austin, in an effort to try to help junior devs skill up and navigate the job space, right? I didn't have that kind of help when I came up. I was kind of just doing it by myself. So I wanted to try to be that for other people that were going through it in Austin. And it was going good for quite a while. And then attendance started to drop off in the summer, which is typical in Austin because no one wants to go out in the heat. Um, and at the same time, I had some other issues come up that demanded my time. And so I'm no longer the organizer for it. But I did enjoy my time in, teaching other people the things that I knew and the lessons I learned through Hunter Devs and Danny Thompson, and right, sharing that wisdom was great. And I definitely believe that you are doing yourself a disservice if you do not engage with local meetups and groups in your area if they're available.
Yeah, let's assume that like you're somebody parachuting into tech, essentially. Like, let's take somebody who's been working in manufacturing who wants to kind of develop more advanced skills. They want to go from merely paying the bills with their manufacturing job to being able to like save money and long-term map out like how they're going to help their kids pay for college and things like that, how they're going to eventually be able to retire, those kinds of things. And they are, let's say they're in their 40s, like you and I are, and they want to do what you've done. What is kind of like a shortest path that they could take if they wanted to quickly achieve what you achieved, just assuming they have kind of like a comparable but more genericized skill set from working in, they don't necessarily have a university degree. They've just been working in a job. They understand how to like show up on time, and they don't have like major like things in the way. Like they're not necessarily like addicted to drugs. They don't necessarily have a felony or anything like that. Like,
right.
And those are things that you can absolutely overcome, but there are additional layers of difficulty layered on, right? But let's just take somebody in your situation. Like, what would you recommend they do if they want to be able to get a job as quickly as possible as a software engineer?
Yeah, so do something every day, even if it's 10 minutes, and stick with it. I did in my journey to learn, ended up taking some breaks for various reasons, financial reasons, family reasons. And, my learning took a course of over 3 years. It can be done in less than a year if you stick with it. I fully believe that, that you can do it in less than a year if you, spend time every day. If it's listening to 10 minutes of a podcast on your way to work, if it's doing some leak code real quick or doing the next module at FreeCodeCamp, just get in and do something at least every day so that your mind continues to grow. And those little actions, they add up at the end of the year. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to try to keep with it. Don't overwhelm yourself and try to cram in 5 hours a day every day. You'll burn out. Like I experienced some burnout during my journey doing that too. But try to do something every day that keeps your mind active and keeps your brain in the learning mode to be able to expand your knowledge and skills.
You said earlier that you did kind of burn out, like that maybe you overdid it at some point. I think many people can identify with it. Their motivation waxes and wanes. How would you prevent yourself from burning out if you were like, you're really on a tear, you're making a lot of progress? How would you pace yourself now, knowing what you know from your experience?
I think a lot of it also, like this is an aside to that question first, is having faith that it's going to work. I didn't know that this was going to work. I wanted it to work. I needed it to work, but I didn't know it was going to work, right? And so I think part of the reason why I got burnout is I felt like I was doing all this extra effort and I don't know if it's ever going to pay off, right? This is time I could have been spending with my kid, right? I could have spent this 2 hours today, hanging out with my kid. Or I could have spent this 2 hours, finding a better job, right? But instead I was choosing to play a longer game. And I don't know that during the process I had enough faith that it was going to pay off.
Yeah, man, that's so profound. I think a lot of people that are just like naive and kind of happy-go-lucky, like Forrest Gump type characters, they just have this like confidence about them and things work because they don't get discouraged. And then more cerebral people who are more like worrying and thinking like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? It doesn't work for everybody. What if I'm not, like they can create all these kind of elaborate scenarios in which things fail. It's much easier to come up with lots of scenarios of things failing than that one scenario where things work, right? And it sounds like that if you could send a message back in time to yourself, maybe it'd just be like, have faith that it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. That's so helpful. So I want to move on to some of the things that you're doing as a dev. Can you walk us through a typical day in the life of Thomas Gooch? My understanding is you work remotely?
No, I work hybrid.
Okay, what does that mean?
Some days I'm in the office, and some days, so Fridays I'm at home, but the rest of the week I'm in the office.
Okay. And you are somebody who believes a lot in working remotely. I saw a LinkedIn post from you where you basically were saying like, unless your job involves like talking directly to a customer and saying, here you are, have a nice day. Or if it involves like physically doing things like your physical job where you were like monitoring these machines and going through multi-step processes with them in order to produce semiconductors. Like maybe you can talk a little bit more about your belief in remote work and the value of it and how much you would optimize for working remotely in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe remote work is a fantastic idea, and a lot of the barriers to remote work are simply to prop up real estate values,
Yeah.
and as an excuse to populate the office. I really believe that we can do just as much collaboration digitally that we can do in person, and I'm a little neurodivergent, and having people talk next to me distracts me. I can't tune them out very well. And so when I'm in the office, I'm less productive because I'm getting distracted. I can't get into that flow and just cruise because there's always things going on around. Whereas when I'm home, my office is sterile. It's quiet. There's nobody to bother me. If someone Teams chats me, I can ignore it until I'm done. But if someone walks up to me, I have to stop what I'm doing, stop my train of thought, and then talk to them and try to regain where I was at when we're done. And so I really believe that you can collaborate just as well digitally as you can in person. And, you cut out an hour in traffic each way, depending on where you live, right? But in Austin,
Yeah.
traffic is a little rough. It's about 45, 50 minutes for me each way. And so cutting that out is amazing. That's time I can be working, right? That's time I can be doing other things. And so that's definitely helpful. Also, I get disability grade migraines, and being able to work from home is a lot easier of a prospect than having to drive under a migraine, which is dangerous. And be in the office under all those extra stimuli. The office is bright, there's noise, and that's terrible to have during a migraine. Whereas if I'm home, it's quiet. I can turn down the lights and go into dark mode and still be functional.
Yeah.
But
So full control over your
office,
environment and external stimuli.
yeah,
Can you talk about your migraines a little bit more? Of course, I want to be, respectful of your personal privacy related to health and stuff like that. But I think a lot of people listening to this may be going through similar things. Like I have a brother who has frequent migraines, for example, and just being able to empathize with what that's like, and then tips you would have for people that, maybe similarly neurodivergent. There are many ways you can be neurodivergent, but in the way that you are.
yeah. So my migraines, they usually happen in the morning for me, and I'm not sure what the trigger is. It doesn't seem to be food because I've done the food logs, and nothing seems to match up really well. So I don't know why I get them, but I do take some medications for them, and I have some what are called abort drugs that help cut the time in half or more, that are really great. So having a good medical community around it is helpful, like a neurologist or a pain specialist. Has been very, very, very helpful. Having the migraine, it's like all of your stimulus is turned up to 11. The noises are too loud, the sights are too bright, your thoughts are too loud. Even like trying to think through things causes pain. And it's like that TV static is coming in on all signals at 11. Um, and so it's not just a headache. Um, all stimulus really is way too powerful, and it's really it's not fun. I really wish I didn't have them, um, and I don't wish them on my worst enemy. But learning to live with them has been, um, you know, a lot of acceptance of it's going to pass, right? It's not forever. In the moment, it does feel like forever. Time slows down because you're in pain and you're having trouble thinking clearly, um, and so that's a struggle. But um, being able to work around that is very helpful too.
Yeah.
So if I have an hour that I can't focus on something because I have a migraine, waiting for my meds to kick in, that's very helpful.
Yeah. And just to give us some context, like if you were like to leave these untreated and not take, I believe you call them like abort meds. Like if you were to just let the migraine run its natural course, like how long would some of these be affecting you?
8 to 24 hours.
Yeah. And at Commit Your Code, I was hyped to meet you. But you actually had
Yeah.
a migraine come on. So Commit Your Code was this big conference we had here in Dallas last week. Awesome event. Like 800 people showed up. Danny put it on. Danny Thompson. Leon was there. Tons of people from the developer community were there. They gave lots of money to the Free Code Camp. Like they basically gave the proceeds of it to St. Jude's, to another like medical, like children's hospital type thing, and then they gave Free Code Camp a third as well. So we got like $7,000+. So huge shout out to Danny and to everybody who participated in this event. That is going to Free Code Camp. It is going to make Free Code Camp better. Unfortunately, you had a migraine.
Yeah, and I didn't get to meet you. I was really, really disappointed about that. But I couldn't hang anymore.
Yeah.
I tried to make it work, but there's too many people, there's too much noise, and I just decided to call it a day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a testament to your theory about like being able to get things done remotely. Like you and I are having this pretty deep probing conversation and we're just having it remotely. Like if we were at the actual event, there'd probably be lots of other things going on and we wouldn't have been able to drill this deep. So I feel very grateful that I get to talk
Yeah.
with you. And I also appreciate you coming on in short notice. I want to dive into a little bit more about your personal life because it's very cool and interesting. I understand you've got 2 adult children that you've supported, like working in manufacturing. And one of the things that struck me when you and I were talking earlier, before we started recording, is that when you were a kid, you moved out like basically immediately. As soon as you turned 18 or so, you move out and you get your own apartment, you pay your own bills, and that's part of being a man in the 90s, right? And being self-sufficient. Can you talk about like how that has affected you? Just the notion of like immediately moving out and trying to support yourself.
Yeah. So, of the things I regret in life, that's one of them. I was excited to do it. I was excited to be on my own. And my parents weren't overly restrictive. They were great parents. Like I'm lucky. I lived in an intact household, right? I wasn't split between two parents' houses. And my parents were fantastic. I always knew that they loved me. Um, you know, and it was great. But I still wanted to be out on my own. And me and my best friend got an apartment together, um, and was going to community college and working. And I felt that was the thing to do. Um, I wish I just would have stayed home and got through college a little easier than having to have work full time and go to school full time, and barely make it by because at that age you're not making very much money. Um, and that was 25 years ago when things were a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But the thing to do back then was definitely to move out as soon as you're 18. Like all of my siblings did it, to go out as soon as they can. And I wish I probably could have stayed home. It probably was an option that we never explored. Um, but I was the last kid out the door, the youngest of 9 siblings,
Wow.
yeah, Brady Bunch style. But um, but yeah, I was the last one out the door. And I'm sure I could have stayed and got through college or at least some of it. But I was too stoked up to be my own person and do my own thing and show the world that I can do it. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was what was expected. And, what I want for my kids is better than what I had. And, I'm lucky enough that I've invited my daughter to live with me. Um, One of my daughters lives with me, one lives with mom. Um, and I invited her to live with me rent free to so that she can finish college and get through um, her studies without having to work full time and having that pressure, right? And then she can fly out and do what she wants. And if she wants to leave tomorrow, she's free to. But the option's there for her. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that she takes it because, I get to spend more time with my kid. Um, and my kids are fantastic kids. Like I know every parent says that, but like there was never a rebellious teenager phase for either of them. Um, that they always wanted to hang out with dad. Like as they grown up, they were really close with me when they were young. They were daddy's girls, and I kept waiting for the day when they would kind of push away because everyone tells me that's coming, and that never happened for me. They remained daddy's girls. They always wanted to be with me. They always wanted to do stuff with me. They always wanted my time, and that was so fantastic. Um, and being able to have her with me is just it's really great. It's great to have her here and see her go out with friends and do her own thing and be her own person.
Yeah. That's really cool that you have such a close relationship with them and that they never pushed away. I am deathly afraid that my kids are going to start becoming rebellious, but it's good to hear that that is not a necessary part of the growing
Yeah.
up process. And it sounds like you're going to be able to continue to watch from up close as she continues to develop. I mean, kids, from what I understand, I'm not a doctor, but they're not really fully mentally mature until they're like 25 or so is when the brain stops really doing its initial development. And we treat kids like when they're 18, like, okay, you're a grown up, go join
Yeah.
the military,
Yeah.
go do dangerous jobs as a lumberjack or whatever. Right. Like, and I feel like to some extent, like we should kind of like maybe institutionalize the notion that kids are still kind of kids until they're a little bit older. I don't know where this 18-year-old thing, I guess that's about when puberty ends and people are like fully grown vertically.
Right.
But that doesn't seem to be the case in terms of like emotional maturity and stuff like that. And there was a stigma for a long time against living with your folks. You were a failure if you lived with your folks. And it sounds like culturally things are changing. I mean, that was never the case in Eastern cultures. Like a lot of my Chinese friends, my Indian friends, they live with their parents, or maybe they moved into a dormitory. But if they couldn't move into a dormitory, if they were doing like community college or some sort of commuter school, they would live with their parents. And I think that saves a tremendous amount of resources, and it also gives more time to spend with your family because childhood is short. Yeah.
Yeah, and multi-generational families used to be the norm, even in America 100 years ago. It's only in the last 100 years that we've gone to single generation households as the norm in the last 100 years.
Yeah, Industrial Revolution, just one more thing that it kind of like shook up, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about what you're excited about in software development. I know that you've been doing a lot of AI assisted development and just experimenting with that. And it's not like you're like some, AI hype man or anything like that. Like you have a very pragmatic perspective, and it's informed by practice, not just speculation. A lot of people that aren't software developers, they speculate that this is going to make everybody a 10x developer and stuff, but you've actually used it. Can you give us some like real talk about like how it's been helpful, like what you've tried? Go into as much detail as you can. I'm excited to learn about this.
Yeah, so for AI, I've kind of been a slower adopter than some other folks. I think there's an AI hype bubble coming. And I think companies that have rushed to embrace that are starting to see the downsides of it, where it's not maybe the magical solution that it was built to be. But that said, it's still awesome. It still does some really amazing things. And I have been using some AI such as coding lately. I've been playing around just making a website just for fun, just to push it and see how far I can push it until it starts having issues. Because I wanted to know where that boundary is. Because previously, all I used it for was like if I wanted to refactor a form into a table, I didn't want to manually have to type all those things out. So I would have AI do it for me. Or, if I was troubleshooting an error and couldn't find the answer on Stack Overflow, I'd type it into ChatGPT and hopefully it would help me. And it usually did. But I have been playing with Codex, which is a ChatGPT product that goes into your GitHub repository and looks at your code, and you can assign it tasks. Just like you can assign tickets like in Jira. It's not Jira, it's their own project board, but you can assign it tasks and it goes and does it pretty well. There's a point where it starts getting circular issues and it doesn't understand deeper context. But for a lot of easy things, it's nice and easy. Create me a form with these fields, right? And boom, it's there, it's done in 2 minutes, and I didn't have to do it. I can focus on like the styling and the other things. It's been really great for that. Initialize me a repository with a manual auth system, and it does it really well. It's nice, secure, uses JWT, protects your routes. It was really great. So I've been using that, and I've been using what's the other one? Copilot inside of GitHub.
Yeah.
I've also experimented with their own version, and it's 6 of one and half dozen of another in terms of what is better. Sometimes ChatGPT's codex trips up and Copilot fixes it. Sometimes Copilot trips up and ChatGPT's codex fixes it. So I haven't found out which one of those two is better. But definitely they can do a lot more than I expected them to do in pretty good quality. But there are limitations. It's not a full solution. And I also think that because I'm a developer and I know what to tell it, it's working better than if a random person just tried to create a website with it, right? If someone that didn't know development and doesn't know the keywords and the structure of how things work tries to make it, I think they're going to struggle because they don't know how to tell it what to do. And so as a developer's tool, I think it's fantastic. As an accessibility tool for the random Joe, I don't think it's as great.
Yeah. And a lot of people are anxious about like, oh, this could reduce the total developer employment because you just need a few like senior devs who have these powerful tools and they can get more work done. And thus there's less work for other people. And it's possible that a lot of the tasks that are getting done by LLM powered tools, AI code gen, are tasks that a junior dev would have been assigned. Like, do you have any thoughts or perspectives on that?
I do. And I think we are seeing some of that happening right now, where we're seeing less junior developer jobs out there and more AI enabled roles happening and roles being transitioned to AI enabled. I think it's going to backfire in the long run. We're going to run out of senior developers because we're not generating new ones when we're not hiring junior developers to work. I think it's not going to be a long-term solution, and I think there's going to be a correction in about 5 years. They're going to realize that they need to actually hire people for these things, and have juniors be AI enabled, right? And have them be able to do twice as much as what a regular junior could do and split the difference. But I think the companies that have rushed into early adoption are feeling some pain points about how that's working out for them.
Yeah. If you were to advise somebody who is totally new to both software development and AI assisted development, what percentage of the skill is learning the actual software development itself, the domain expertise, the process of building stuff, and what percentage is knowing how to like leverage AI tools and getting practice with those AI tools? Let's say there's like 100% available. Like, how should somebody spend their time, and what sequence should they spend their time? Like, at what point should they start actually using the AI tools, in your opinion? And like, how much should they focus on fundamentals? So again, I'm not trying to color your answer, but I just want to be very clear about kind of what I'm asking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is a great question. And this was actually the topic of the last meetup I hosted. And for like a junior developer just starting out, it's 95% fundamentals. Only use, an AI assist after you've, tried to do it yourself. You need to learn those fundamentals. You need to learn how to tell it what to do. You need to learn the structure, the data structures, the algorithms. You need to learn the patterns that are there to make the AI part effective for you. And if you just go to AI for everything, you're never going to learn all those things. So in that first year, so if we say, someone could go from 0 to done in a year, 95% needs to be fundamentals, right? If you can't figure it out, you can use those tools to help explain to you, because you can say, why is this wrong? And paste in the snippet, right? Or why is this not working? And it'll explain it to you in pretty good terms. I've used it for Java, not understanding why something didn't work, right? And this is the equals to operator that I mentioned earlier, that I mix up which one to use because of
Yeah.
JavaScript and Java. But my answer is definitely 95% fundamentals.
Yeah. Okay. And it is important for me to tease out that you already know programming. You're learning Java as kind of like a second major development ecosystem. And it's important to say, you're not asking like, do this for me. You're saying, why isn't this doing this? Like it's an inquiry process. You're not just trying to accelerate getting the job done. You're actually slowing down and trying to learn from it. So, go ahead.
It's that old adage of go slower to go faster, right? You've got to develop that repetition. You've got to develop that muscle memory to make it happen.
Awesome. That is such a profound point. Go slower to go faster. Slowing down, ultimately putting in the time, that's going to help you. It has been such a pleasure talking with you, Thomas. I've learned a great deal. I think you have encapsulated so much kind of like hard-earned, hard-fought wisdom over the past 20 plus years of your adult life. What is the future for you? Like, what do you want to do with the next 10 years? Are there any big projects you're working on? Like, where do you see things going from here?
Yeah, wow, 10 years. When I first started out in development, I had this dream that within 5 years, I would be working remotely as a digital nomad, and me and my dog would be traveling around in a camper van. And that dream is nice to have, but it's not going to happen that way. I do want to be in a fully remote role in the next few years, so that I can spend more time at home with my dog. And then, right now what I'm working on is a project. The biggest villain in like Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs is scheduling, getting everybody on the same schedule. That's the hardest part about making those groups work. And so I'm trying to build a website that solves that problem, that lets you list out your availability and your location and find groups that are looking for someone in that availability and location, right? To be able to play an in-person game. There's already great services for digital games out there, but I haven't found a great one that's working for in-person games. And so I want to try to help solve that. And not just for tabletop RPGs, but for other games. If you want to have someone to play like a Gloomhaven with you or whatever, that it's a game that has a campaign and takes a long time to finish, that you can sync up and do that with. And we have, like on Facebook, there's a local group that tries to connect people, right, called Austin Geeks and Gamers or something. But this would be a centralized service where you could create your profile and shop around for other people. So that's what I'm working on right now. That's my little pet project, that I'll hopefully wrap up here soon. And then if it takes off, I'll keep working on it. If not, it was just another fun thing to work on.
Very cool. And that's going to essentially facilitate a lot of people who normally there might be like a board game night and everybody goes to a board game shop or a cafe or somebody's house on that night, but things come up, right? There are conflicts and schedules. And so this allows you to be a little bit more granular in trying to schedule those types of events. So a lot of game nights that would never have happened without your scheduling tool could happen in the future.
That's the hope.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure learning from you, Thomas Gooch. Everybody check out the links to Thomas. He's very active on LinkedIn, posting a lot of insight over there. And until next week, everybody, happy coding.
Thank you.